Let's take a look at how I plan in the ACE lesson planning template. Now before we jump into my lesson, let's start with the unit cover page, because this is where it all begins. At the top, you'll see the title of my unit, Vamos a la Ciudad. Students will be learning about the city in this unit. Below, you will see the unit rationale. This is where I work through exactly why I'm teaching my students the concepts found within the unit. Below the unit rationale, you'll see the unit goal. This reminds us what we're working towards throughout the unit. Next, we have unit prior knowledge. This is what my students must know before we enter into this unit. And finally, the unit assessment. This assessment will be found in the form of a performance assessment, in which students will create a written itinerary with pictures and descriptions of a trip to Mexico City. Now, if we scroll down, we'll find the different lessons found within this unit. The first 5 lessons are in the acquiring and integrating phase. I actually added in this column to the ACE template by right-clicking, hitting Insert, and then adding an entire column. Each lesson has an objective and an assessment. The objective once again shows us what we're working towards, while the assessment is what I will use to see that the students have mastered the material found in the lesson itself. After the A and I's, we have our traditional test. The traditional test is what you probably remember from school, with multiple choice, fill in the blank, short answer, and essay questions. After the traditional test, we begin to extend and refine the concepts that we learned in lessons 1 through 5. We often take this opportunity in the foreign language classroom to really dig deep into Latino culture. We close off the unit with using knowledge meaningfully with the performance assessment. In the performance assessment, students show me that they can really use the concepts that we learned in the unit in a meaningful manner. Today we're going to be focusing on Lesson Plan 4. When I click on this link, this will take me to the blank lesson planning template that I can use to plan this lesson. Let's take a look. We're now within the blank template of Lesson Plan 4. Here at the top, if I double click, I will be able to put in the title of my lesson. Because we are learning about time and telling at what time we're going to certain places in the city, I name my lesson, ¿A qué hora vas? At what time do you go? Now if you go down a bit to this note section and double click, you'll be able to fill this green box with different notes that will help you within this lesson, and then also notes to look back on next year while planning. I first like to put differentiation. I often like to bold the differentiation header so that it becomes easier to read as I add more notes. Within my notes on differentiation, I break it down day by day so I can see exactly how I'm differentiating material for my varying learners in the classroom. After differentiation, I like to add a different header entitled, What Worked Well? This is what I will look at next year as I'm planning this lesson again. What are the things that I did that really grabbed the students' attention? What did they respond well to? And most importantly, what helped them to learn the best? Just like with differentiation, I like to break it down day by day. That way, when I'm looking back, I can go to day 1 of LP4 and say, all right, what do I need to change and what can I keep? Same with day 2 and day 3. So what about those things I need to change? Well, that's why I add a third section to this green box. What to change for next time. Here I write down all the things that I do not want to reuse again next year. It's important to do this while the material is still fresh in your memory, so perhaps at the end of each day, you can take a few minutes to jot down your notes. Here you'll see that I have some changes for day 1, but I also have some changes as a whole. This will be important for me to remember next year as I do this lesson again. Now when you want to close this box, simply press Enter or Return. You might get freaked out because it looks like all of the text has suddenly gone away. But if you take this box right here and simply drag it down, you'll be able to see all of your text within that green box. It's now time to start planning your lesson. I like to separate the days out by highlighting these boxes, making them yellow with the paint tool, and then marking them by day, such as day 1. Whenever you're done typing in a cell, simply hit return. In this far left column, you will put the time that you are planning to use for each activity. I like to be as specific as possible. That way I know exactly how much time I need to spend on each activity, and don't run the risk of accidentally doing the same activity for the whole class. If you move to the right, you'll see that this is labeled Student Learning Task or Activity. In this middle column is where you will write everything that the students will be doing within the task or activity. If they need to share with a partner, write that in this box. If they are speaking about a picture posted, or if they are creating a story, you write that in this box. If they can use their notes, if they shouldn't use their notes, if they need to have out any materials from their desk, go ahead and write that here. We then move over to this far right box, titled Method and Teacher Activity. The method includes things like bell work, reviewing bell work, paired work, group work, individual work. In foreign language, we use TPR or CLT. You can also have your method be things like formal assessment or informal assessment. We put these in caps so that they stand out to us, because we want to make sure that we're not using the same method over and over and over again in our classroom. Varying our methods help us to create a classroom environment in which we ensure that all students are able to thrive. The teacher activity tells me exactly what I should be doing while my students are on their own learning task or activity. Teacher activities may include things like passing out papers, giving directions, modeling with a student in front of the classroom, circulating, monitoring, or participating in an activity if there are an odd number of students. I love that I plan out the teacher activities because it helps me to remember that I should not be just sitting at my desk, but rather I should be taking an active role in my classroom just as my students should be. Now, normally when we want to type in the ACE template, you'll go over to the cell in which you want to type, you'll double click, and begin typing. For the sake of time, however, I'm going to copy and paste from another lesson that I've already typed up. That way I can walk you through the lesson, pointing out some key factors to you and showing you the basic structure of one. So here I have my full lesson plan 4. As you look through, you will notice that I start out class the same way each day. I begin with bell work, then prayer, and then I review the bell work. It is so important for me to start out class the same way each day, with the same structure. It allows for consistency, and the students know exactly what the procedure is for entering the classroom. They know that they are expected to get right to work, and then once I've taken roll, to stand and thank the Lord for the day. I usually try to structure each lesson to have a pre-activity, an activity, and a post-activity. In this first day of this lesson, you'll notice that the pre-activity is taking notes on the grammatical structure of the lesson. The pre-activity, activity, and post-activity move from being highly scaffolded and structured to less and less structured. This ensures that students learn the concepts, but then ultimately take control of the language and begin to use it on their own. The same goes for days 1, 2, and 3. Day 1, the lesson is highly scaffolded, but little by little the scaffolding falls away so that by the end of the lesson, they're able to complete the assessment without a problem. Just as I start each class with bell work, so do I end each class with a closing activity. The closing activity allows me to either informally assess students, or it allows students to have a time of reflection on what they learned in class that day. I will now scroll through my lessons so that you can see the different methods that I use. Please take note on the variety of methods within the lesson itself. Once again, we're looking at these letters in caps. We have bell work, prayer, reviewing bell work, CLT, direct instruction, whole class, individual work, closure, and homework. Here we add in some paired work. And then at the end, we have my formal assessment. This formal assessment is very important because it ultimately shows me how well students have mastered the material and the concepts within this lesson. One last note I'd like to make is that you might have noticed how specific I am in my planning. And while this does take some time in the planning stages, it will be super helpful next year as I go back to my lessons and know exactly what I meant within each cell. I highly encourage you to take some time with your planning and to really think it through so that you can be the best teacher you can be for your students and so that you create an environment in which your students are well equipped to learn.